After years of constant degradation, my husband told me he wanted a divorce and kicked me out of the house. As he laughed and told me, "You're nothing without me," I felt the rage building inside me. I looked him in the eyes and said, "You'll be begging me to come back." But what he didn't know was that I was about to expose his darkest secrets and destroy everything he'd worked for. I'm not proud of how long I stayed. 21 years is a long time to live with someone who makes you feel small every single day. But when you're in it, when you've built a whole life with someone, it's not as simple as just walking away. Especially when they've made sure you have no way to leave. When I first met Darren, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. He was smart, successful, driven. He had this way of making you feel like the most important person in the room. But that charm didn't last. Not once he felt like he had me locked down. Looking back, the signs were there from the beginning. The little put-downs that didn't feel like jokes. The way he talked over me in conversations. How he always had to be the one in control of everything. Still, I loved him. Or maybe I loved who I thought he was. And I told myself things would get better once we had a family, once we were more financially secure, once he made partner. But the truth is, Darren was never going to change. The more successful he got, the worse he treated me. He started treating me like one of his assistants, someone there to clean up after him, smile for his clients, and keep quiet. I stopped working after our 3rd year of marriage. Not because I wanted to, but because Darren convinced me it was best for the household. He said I didn't need to work, that he could provide for us both, and I should focus on managing the home. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Supportive even. It took me a while to realize it was about control. From then on, I was given an allowance. His word, not mine. I couldn't spend over a certain amount without asking. Every credit card was in his name. The car title, the mortgage, even our dog's vet bills. Everything had his signature, not mine. I started feeling more like a live-in maid than a partner. And the worst part? He made me feel like it was my fault. Like I'd let myself go. Like I was lucky to still have him. By year 15, the emotional abuse was a daily thing. He never hit me, but sometimes I almost wished he had. At least then I'd have something visible. But no, Darren was smarter than that. His abuse was quiet, calculated. A look. A snide comment. Public humiliation disguised as a joke. And always followed by, "You know I'm just kidding, right? Don't be so sensitive." I stayed. I told myself I didn't have a choice. And in a way, I didn't. I had no job, no money of my own, and after all those years out of the workforce, no one was exactly lining up to hire me. He made sure of that. He wanted me dependent. Then came the final blow. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was folding laundry when Darren came home early from work. He walked in, all casual, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. He never came home early. Never wanted to talk. He didn't even sit down. Just stood there in the doorway and told me, flat out, that he wanted a divorce. "I've met someone else," he said. "Her name's Natalie. She works at the firm." He smiled, like it was good news. I feel alive again. I remembered just staring at him, like I couldn't process the words. He kept going. "You'll be out by Friday. I've already spoken to my lawyer. I'll give you some money to get by for a couple months." It wasn't even the cheating that hurt the most. It was how casual he was about throwing me away. Like I was nothing. Like I never mattered. Then came the line that burned into my brain forever. "You're nothing without me." He looked me dead in the eyes when he said it, smirking. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just said one thing. "You'll be begging me to come back." He laughed in my face. "You? Please. You don't even have your own bank account." But what Darren didn't know, what he never bothered to notice, was that I had been watching. I may have been quiet, but I was never stupid. I knew every detail of his firm. I knew how he cooked the books. I knew which files were fake, which vendors didn't exist, which consulting fees were really bribes. I used to help him in the early years, back when he still needed me. And I never forgot a thing. He thought I was broken. He thought I'd just disappear. But I wasn't broken. I was angry. and I was about to burn his entire life to the ground. After that day, Darren gave me 5 days to pack up and leave the house. No help. No support. Just a cold list of instructions from his lawyer and a few $1,000s transferred to a prepaid card to get on my feet. He told me I should be grateful. I moved into a crappy one-bedroom apartment on the east side of Aurora. The place smelled like stale cigarettes and old carpet. But it was mine. I sat on the floor the first night with a frozen dinner on my lap and promised myself one thing. He would pay for what he did to me. Every lie. Every insult. Every time he made me feel invisible. The first thing I did was dig out an old laptop I had tucked away in a box of keepsakes, photos, certificates, old legal documents I never threw out. Darren never thought I was smart enough to keep anything. But he was wrong. I still had access to one of his old firm logins. Back when I helped him file tax prep drafts for some shady real estate clients, he'd used my email for a dummy account, then forgot about it. I logged in. Password was the same, his mistress's birthday, back before she was his mistress. Real original. From there, I started collecting everything. Invoices from companies that didn't exist. Client billing padded with ghost hours. Payments to a consultant who, after some digging, turned out to be his golf buddy's 19-year-old son. There were dozens of them, all structured to look clean on the surface, but I knew the language. I'd spent a decade reading legal documents. I knew what to look for. I printed everything, created backups. I wanted a trail, something undeniable. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, played weak. When his lawyer reached out to negotiate the divorce, I told them I didn't want to fight. I just want peace, I said. Let them believe I was broken. I let Darren think he'd won. But I was laying a trap. Then came the next twist. Natalie, the girl he left me for, reached out. She found me through Facebook. Said she was sorry. Said Darren wasn't who she thought he was. Turns out, she didn't know I existed until a few months before the split. He told her we were separated, and I was mentally unstable. She found out the truth when she saw our anniversary posts, still public on his feed. She said he gaslit her the same way he did me. Told her she was imagining things, twisted her words, controlled her money. I didn't trust her at first. But then she sent me screenshots, texts from Darren admitting to hiding money from the firm, bragging about how stupid the partners were, saying things like, as long as the books look clean, no one asks questions. That's when I realized Darren had gotten sloppy. He thought he was untouchable. With Natalie's help, I compiled every message, every document, every questionable transaction. I reached out to an old colleague from my paralegal days, Lisa, who now worked compliance at the state bar. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to raise a flag. A month later, a quiet investigation began. And Darren didn't have a clue. He was busy posting photos of his new life, fancy dinners, ski trips, all bought with dirty money. He started bragging online about his clean break and finally getting rid of dead weight. He didn't know I was the weight holding his whole operation together. Then one morning Lisa called me. Her voice was tight. You were right, she said. There's enough here to open a formal inquiry. But it'll take time. These things always do. I've got time, I told her. But time brought something else I wasn't ready for. Darren filed for spousal misconduct. Claimed I was mentally unfit, that I'd emotionally abused him for years, and that I shouldn't be entitled to any spousal support. He even submitted faked therapy notes from a friend of his, a licensed counselor, who diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder. That broke me for a moment. Not because I believed it, but because it was so cruel. He wasn't just trying to ruin me financially. He wanted to destroy my name, my sanity. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by boxes of evidence, and cried for the first time since he threw me out. Then I got up, wiped my face, and opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it His End, because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. Just when I thought I had everything lined up, things took a turn I never expected. It was mid-October, about 5 months after Darren kicked me out. I was supposed to meet with Lisa's contact from the Attorney Regulation Council for a quiet, unofficial briefing. But the meeting got canceled. No explanation, no follow-up. Then 2 days later, I got a letter taped to my apartment door. It was from Darren's lawyer. He'd filed for an emergency restraining order, claimed I'd been harassing him and cyberstalking Natalie, that I'd hacked his firm's systems, stolen private data, and was unstable, possibly dangerous. The letter even mentioned that I may pose a threat to myself or others. The language was chilling, just close enough to believable that I knew they were setting something up. He was trying to beat me to the punch. If he could discredit me first, nothing I said would matter. For a moment, I panicked. I'd been careful, used a VPN, masked IPs, never logged in from home, but now it didn't matter. If he went public with those claims, my reputation would be gone before I could prove anything. But then, Natalie stepped in again. She sent me a message. He's getting desperate. He told me he was going to ruin your credibility before you ruined his career. I recorded it. Want the file? I nearly fell out of my chair. The audio was rough, but clear. Darren talking to someone, maybe his lawyer, maybe one of his partners, saying, "She thinks she can take me down. She doesn't realize how easy it is to make a woman look crazy. Nobody listens to bitter ex-wives." I sent it to Lisa. 2 weeks later, I got the confirmation. The state was moving forward with a formal ethics complaint. There'd be an audit, a subpoena for his firm's internal records. Quiet, slow, and surgical, exactly the kind of thing Darren would never see coming until it was too late. But that wasn't the twist that cut deepest. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. It was Diane, Darren's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in years. She'd always been Team Darren. Treated me like a charity case, never cruel, but always cold. But this time, she sounded different. Scared. She told me she had something I needed to see. I met her the next day, at a park halfway between us. She handed me a brown envelope, old school. Inside were bank statements, photocopies, and a copy of her father's will. Apparently, Darren had stolen from his own family. Their father had passed 5 years earlier. The will split everything equally between the kids, but Darren was executor. Diane found out by accident that he'd funneled almost all the money into one of his shell companies. The others got peanuts. She'd stayed quiet out of fear. Darren had power, connections, money. He could bury her. But after seeing what he did to me, she said, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. He's done this to everyone. Suddenly, it wasn't just about me anymore. Darren had lied to everyone, manipulated his family, stolen from his own blood, abused women, built his entire empire on fraud, intimidation, and fear. And now, I wasn't the only one coming for him. By the time winter hit, the walls around Darren were already starting to crack. Quietly, slowly, just how I wanted. The state's audit was underway. His firm received a formal notice of investigation, and according to Natalie, who had become an invaluable source, he was spiraling, snapping at partners, accusing junior staff of sabotage. Paranoid about his emails being read, Natalie stayed close, playing innocent, feeding me bits of intel as things fell apart. But I wasn't done. I contacted the IRS, sent them a carefully organized, anonymously mailed packet, a full breakdown of Darren's consulting write-offs, the offshore wire transfers, the inflated expenses. I didn't include my name, just facts, documents, dates, numbers. Let them follow the trail. It was airtight. Then I called Diane. We met again. This time at a lawyer's office. She had already talked to her other siblings. Once they saw the paperwork Darren had buried, they agreed to pursue a civil case for breach of fiduciary duty. It would take time, but they had a real claim. Darren had stolen hundreds of thousands from his family. He'd used their grief as a smokescreen. Meanwhile, Darren kept pushing the divorce forward, desperate to finalize it. But now I had leverage. I told my attorney, who I'd hired quietly, with help from a women's legal fund and Diane's support, that I wasn't settling for anything less than full spousal support, backdated to the day he kicked me out. I wanted the house, the car, and my share of every asset he tried to hide. Darren laughed at first. "You'll get nothing," he said in one email. That was the last time he'd ever laugh at me. Because 3 weeks later, the ethics board suspended his license pending investigation. Word spread fast. Clients pulled out. His firm removed his name from the website. His partners distanced themselves, issuing a statement that Darren's private matters were not representative of the firm's values. Natalie quit and testified in the ethics hearings. Diane filed the family lawsuit. The IRS froze 2 of his accounts. And then he got served on his birthday. I showed up to the final divorce hearing dressed simply. No makeup, no show. Just calm, focused. Darren was a wreck.
Pale. Sweaty.
Hair thinner. Shirt untucked. He tried to play the victim, telling the judge I was obsessed, dangerous, a bitter woman. But his lies didn't stick anymore. Not after the judge saw the paper trail. I left that courtroom with everything he said I'd never get: a settlement, my name cleared, and most importantly, control over my life again. He lost his license, his job, his reputation. Natalie moved out. His siblings cut him off. The house? I didn't even keep it. I sold it out from under him, bought myself a condo in a quiet part of Boulder, and gave the rest of the profits to a legal aid nonprofit for women like me. One day, maybe a year later, I got a message. No name. Just a number I recognized. It said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how much I needed you until you were gone. Please, can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long minute. Then I blocked the number. He was right about one thing. I was nothing like I used to be. And thank God for that.